God has a better plan for you than you have for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. There comes a moment in every person's life when the plans we carefully constructed begin to crumble in our hands. The path we thought was certain suddenly shifts. Opportunities we prayed for slip away, people we relied on walk out, and in those moments we are tempted to believe that life is falling apart. But what if, hear this carefully, what if life isn't falling apart at all? What if it's actually falling into place? What if the disappointment you're feeling is nothing more than divine redirection? What if the plan you're holding onto so tightly is far smaller than the one God has already prepared for you? We spend so much of our lives trying to control outcomes, trying to predict the future, trying to build our own version of success. But God, in His infinite wisdom, sees beyond the moment. He sees beyond the heartbreak, beyond the confusion, beyond the uncertainty. He sees the entire picture, the full tapestry of your life, while you're only holding a single thread, and sometimes the hardest truth to accept is this: God's plan is not just different from yours. It is better than yours, far better, beyond anything you could ask, imagine, design, or even desire for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, there are seasons when God will disrupt your comfort to develop your character. There are moments when He will close doors that you desperately wanted open because He knows what's behind them. There are times when He will remove people you love because they cannot walk with you into the next chapter. You may not understand it now, but trust this, it is never random. There is a divine strategy behind every shift, every delay, every redirection, every heartbreak. God does not waste pain. He does not waste tears. He does not waste seasons. Everything is preparing you for the plan He wrote long before you were even born, and I want you to understand something today. The plan you created for yourself was based on what you knew. It was shaped by your past, your experiences, your fears, and your limited perspective, but God's plan is shaped by your calling, your purpose, and the future He designed for you. His plan is built on infinite wisdom. His plan is built on perfect timing. His plan is built on supernatural alignment. You see half the story. He sees all of it. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you learn to surrender your idea of how life should be, you make room for how God intends it to be. This is where miracles begin. This is where breakthroughs happen. This is where transformation unfolds. Because when God steps in, what once felt like loss becomes preparation. What once felt like delay becomes protection. And what once felt like uncertainty becomes divine direction. His plan is not only better, it's perfect, and today you're stepping into the revelation of that truth. There is a divine moment in every believer's journey when human understanding reaches its limit. You stand at the edge of logic, at the boundary of what makes sense, and right there, where your reasoning can no longer guide you, God begins to reveal a plan that transcends everything you thought you knew. This is the threshold where the natural gives way to the supernatural, where your limited perspective submits to His infinite vision. And the truth is, most people fear this moment because they have been taught to trust what they can see, touch, or calculate. Yet the greatest moves of God rarely begin within the realm of the predictable. They begin in the unseen, in the uncertain, in that quiet place where you finally admit, God, I don't understand. That confession does not signal weakness, it signals alignment. When your understanding ends, it is not a failure, it is an invitation. God does not need your plan, He needs your surrender. He does not require your clarity, He requires your trust. This is the pivot point where faith becomes more than a concept. It becomes a posture. You begin to understand that your life is not governed by what you know, but by what He has spoken. Everything you can grasp is temporary, but everything God has declared is eternal. That is why He often allows you to arrive at a place where your wisdom collapses, so His wisdom can finally take over. There are seasons in your life where nothing adds up, and the more you try to understand the situation, the more confused you become. You question the timing, the losses, the delays, the detours. You replay old decisions, wondering where you went wrong. But what if nothing actually went wrong? What if the confusion is simply God rerouting you to a greater path? What if the door you begged Him to open was too small for the future He designed for you? What if the relationship He ended was never meant to carry the weight of your destiny? What if the plan you made for yourself was only a fraction of what he intends to release? Faith begins where the mind stops. The mind demands explanation. The spirit demands surrender. When your understanding ends, you finally step out of the confinement of what you think is possible and into the realm of divine orchestration. God sees the entire landscape of your life, the mountains you must climb, the valleys you must pass through, the storms that will refine you, the blessings waiting on the other side. He knows the connections you need, the doors that must open, the ones that must close, and the exact timing each step requires. You see only the moment. He sees eternity. There are breakthroughs you will never experience as long as you insist on understanding everything. Understanding is the anchor of control, faith is the release into divine flow, and God moves mightily through those who choose flow over control, surrender over logic. Sometimes he lets your plan break so he can replace it with something that aligns with your true purpose. Sometimes he lets relationships fall apart because those connections were rooted in comfort, not calling. Sometimes he allows delays because rushing you ahead would destroy what he intends to build in you. You may feel stuck, but God is actually positioning. You may feel lost, but God is guiding. You may feel abandoned, but God is surrounding you with unseen strength. The moment your understanding runs out is the moment his supernatural strategy begins to unfold. And often, his strategy looks nothing like your expectation. It rarely looks logical. It rarely looks easy. It rarely looks predictable. But it is always intentional. Consider how often God's greatest works began in the absence of human understanding. Noah had no reference for a flood, yet was told to build an ark. Abraham was promised nations, yet was childless. Moses was asked to confront Pharaoh with nothing but a staff. David was anointed king while tending sheep. Every divine assignment began with limited understanding. Human logic said it was impossible. God said it was already written, and that is the essence of this truth. Your lack of understanding does not limit God's ability to move. It only limits your willingness to receive. When God asks you to trust him beyond your understanding, he is not asking you to abandon reason. He is asking you to elevate your perspective. Reason can only guide you within the boundaries of the known, but faith leads you into the territory of the miraculous. God knows that your life cannot be built on limited information. It must be built on divine revelation. Understanding will give you insight for the moment. Faith will give you access to destiny. There are things you prayed for that did not come to pass because God is preparing something better. There are opportunities that slipped away because they were misaligned with your purpose. There are people who exited your life because their season had expired. Everything you thought you lost has been rearranged to serve a greater plan, and the only reason you feel uneasy is because your understanding cannot grasp the magnitude of what God is constructing. When you reach the end of your understanding, humility is born. You realize you are not the architect. God is. You are not the master strategist. God is. You are not the author of your destiny. God is. And once this truth settles deeply within you, peace begins to replace anxiety. Confidence begins to replace confusion. Strength begins to replace fear, because you finally understand that your life is not governed by your ability to figure things out, but by your willingness to trust the one who already has everything figured out. The end of understanding is not a wall, it is a doorway. It is the place where God teaches you that his plan does not require your comprehension, only your cooperation. It is where you begin to move according to his leading instead of your logic. It is where you begin to see that storms do not come to destroy you, but to reposition you. Delays do not come to frustrate you, but to protect you. Detours do not come to confuse you, but to guide you to a better destination. This is the sacred space where God does his greatest work. When you let go, he moves. When you stop trying to understand everything, he starts revealing what you could never see on your own. When your understanding ends, his divine plan, higher, wiser, stronger, and perfectly timed, begins. There are moments in life when a door you prayed for, hoped for, and worked for suddenly shuts in your face. Opportunities collapse, relationships dissolve, plans fall apart, and you are left standing in the silence of confusion. You wonder if you failed, if you were unworthy, if you misheard God. But what you must understand is that every closed door carries a message from the divine. It is not punishment, it is not abandonment, it is not rejection, it is protection, it is God safeguarding you from what your eyes cannot yet see. A closed door is one of the highest forms of divine mercy because God is blocking what would have broken you. He is preventing what would have drained you. He is shielding you from a future that would have cost you more than you were ever meant to pay. Sometimes you cry over a door that was never meant to open because its contents were not aligned with your purpose, your growth, or your destiny. There is relief hidden in every redirection, even if your emotions do not recognize it yet. When God closes a door, it is because you are being redirected to a higher assignment. Your spirit may sense the shift before your mind understands it. You may feel discomfort, restlessness, or a sudden disconnect from things you once desired. This is not failure, it is transition. God is pulling you away from places that cannot support your destiny. He is removing you from circles that cannot handle your calling. He is steering you from environments that would have limited your evolution. What you call loss is the beginning of liberation. Many people stay trapped in situations that God already closed because they keep knocking on doors He has sealed for their protection. They cling to relationships that drain their peace, careers that suffocate their gifts, and opportunities that weaken their spirit. They confuse familiarity with purpose, but a closed door is God's way of saying, this is no longer your home, this is no longer your assignment, this is no longer where your growth will flourish. And when He shuts a door, no amount of effort will force it open again because He is protecting you from settling for less than what He designed you to receive. The divine removes you from what is beneath you long before it gives you what is meant for you. You may not understand the timing, but you must trust the intention. God will close a door to save you from heartbreak. He will close a door to preserve your energy. He will close a door to position you for greater influence, deeper love, and divine alignment. He does not block opportunities out of cruelty. He does it out of care. There are blessings designed specifically for you, but you cannot access them while holding on to spaces that restrict you. Closed doors create space for new paths. They break attachments that were slowing your progress. They disrupt patterns that were keeping you stagnant. They force you to grow beyond the boundaries of your comfort. God closes the door not to hurt you, but to stretch you into the version of yourself capable of receiving what He has prepared. Sometimes the divine will allow rejection to reveal redirection. The no you heard was not a denial, it was a compass pointing you toward where you truly belong. You were not rejected, you were preserved, you were not bypassed, you were elevated to a path that requires a different environment. You may feel like you missed something, but in truth, something missed you because it was not your assignment. What is yours will never require you to beg, chase, force, or compromise your worth. Every closed door teaches you something about trust. It pushes you to rely on faith instead of familiarity, on discernment instead of desperation. You learn to stop asking, why did this end? And begin asking, what is God protecting me from? You learn to stop fighting for what you have outgrown and start preparing for what is coming next. The closed door shifts your focus from loss to divine intention. You must understand that God does not operate within the limits of your understanding. He sees the entire picture. The people conspiring behind your back, the environments dimming your potential, the opportunities that appear beautiful but carry hidden burdens. He sees the storms you cannot handle, the disappointments that would crush you, the distractions that would delay your calling. A closed door is His way of saying, I love you too much to let you walk into something that is beneath your destiny. There are doors you begged God to open that would have destroyed your peace. There are people you pleaded for who would have drained your spirit. There are jobs you wanted that would have buried your gift. There are opportunities you chased that would have locked you into a life far smaller than the one you were meant to live. Every closed door has a purpose. Every delay has a reason. Every not yet has divine timing stitched into it. Consider the moments in your life where you later realized that what you thought you wanted was not what you needed. Think about the heartbreak that led to healing, the job loss that led to calling, the forced ending that led to freedom. At the time you saw the pain, now you see the protection, and in the seasons ahead you will look back and understand that the doors God closed today saved you from futures you were never meant to walk into. Closed doors strengthen your faith muscles. They train you to trust without evidence. They teach you to walk forward even when you cannot see what lies ahead. You grow spiritually when you stop interpreting closed doors as personal failure and begin interpreting them as divine strategy. The door shut because it had to. The relationship ended because it no longer aligned with your becoming. The opportunity vanished because it was too small for your calling. The pathway closed because God is preparing a higher one. You are not being delayed, you are being redirected. You are not being denied, you are being protected. You are not being punished, you are being positioned. What is ahead of you requires a level of strength, clarity, and spiritual maturity that the old door could not provide. Trust the closure, honor the redirection, embrace the protection. Because when God closes a door, He is not taking something from you. He is saving you for something greater. There comes a point in every spiritual journey when God begins to separate you from people you once believed would walk with you forever. It feels sudden, it feels painful, it feels confusing. You wonder what went wrong, why the connection faded, why the relationship dissolved, why the bond could no longer hold. But the truth is far more divine than personal. Before God reveals purpose, He removes people who cannot carry the weight of where you're going. Not everyone is meant to witness the next chapter of your becoming. Separation is not always a sign of conflict. Often, it is a sign of elevation. There are individuals whose presence fits your past but has no place in your destiny. God sees what you cannot see. The intentions hidden behind smiles, the motives masked behind loyalty, the limitations buried beneath familiarity. He knows who would hinder your growth, who would dilute your calling, and who would resist your transformation. So He removes them, sometimes gently and sometimes abruptly, because your purpose cannot breathe in environments that refuse to grow. You may try to hold onto certain relationships because they feel comfortable. You may cling to connections that once felt safe, but comfort does not equal alignment. Familiarity does not equal compatibility with your calling. When God begins to elevate you, He isolates you from anything that would sabotage the next dimension of your destiny. He creates distance to create clarity. He removes access to create growth. And though you may feel alone, you are actually being protected. Some people walk out not because they are bad, but because their assignment in your life has expired. You crossed paths for a reason, but not for eternity. Their season had a beginning and an ending, and when the time runs out, God shifts the dynamic to preserve your purpose. Holding on to expired connections is one of the quickest ways to suffocate divine momentum. You cannot take everyone with you into a future designed specifically for you. There are relationships God will strip away because they were rooted in emotional dependence rather than spiritual alignment. There are friendships that collapse because they were built on your old identity. There are people who disappear because they were tied to the version of you God is calling you out of. When you grow, some relationships must break. When you evolve, some attachments must loosen. When God calls you higher, not everyone can breathe at that altitude. Some people are connected to your history, but not your destiny. Even betrayal becomes divine strategy. Not because the hurt is justified, but because God uses the break to push you forward. The betrayal reveals what you refuse to see. The disappointment exposes what you tried to ignore. The separation delivers you from connections that would have sabotaged your purpose if they remained. What feels like heartbreak is often heaven's intervention. Sometimes God removes people because their presence would become a distraction. They would pull your attention away from His voice. They would influence your choices in ways that misalign you with the divine path. They would keep you busy, comfortable, entertained, or emotionally entangled, preventing you from hearing the calling within. God removes distractions disguised as relationships because clarity cannot thrive in noise. Other times, God removes people because your spirit outgrew their energy. You are evolving internally while they remain spiritually stagnant. You are being refined while they cling to old patterns. You are stepping into purpose while they remain trapped in cycles of fear, insecurity, and limitation. When you outgrow someone spiritually, the connection becomes strained, not from conflict, but from mismatch. God separates you to protect your momentum. There are people who cannot go with you because they do not have the character to withstand the blessings you are about to receive. They would turn the blessing into competition. They would respond to your elevation with envy. They would interpret your growth as a threat, and God will not allow you to rise while being surrounded by hearts that are secretly hoping you fail. So he creates a divine exit, sometimes without explanation, so your purpose is not contaminated by insecure company. You will notice that before major spiritual shifts, relationships begin to change. People become distant, conversations lose depth, the energy shifts, your spirit feels the disconnect long before your mind understands it. That is God detaching you internally before separating you physically. He loosens the emotional grip so the departure does not destroy you. Pay attention to this spiritual signal. Distance often precedes destiny. Every divine separation makes space for new connections. Purpose requires a different type of people, those who sharpen you, challenge you, elevate you, and align with your calling. But God cannot send them while your life is crowded with expired assignments. The removal is the preparation, the clearing is the blessing, the loss is the setup for divine alignment. What God removes, he replaces with better, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, and purposefully. You may feel abandoned, but you are being upgraded. You may feel rejected, but you are being rerouted. You may feel lonely, but you are being positioned. God isolates before he elevates. He separates before he reveals. He subtracts before he multiplies. There are people you prayed to keep who would have destroyed your future. There are people you begged God to restore who were only meant to push you forward through their absence. There are people you tried to hold on to who were blocking the blessings waiting to enter your life. The removal hurts only because you cannot yet see what God is preparing in their place. Every person removed creates a divine vacancy. That vacancy will soon be filled with individuals who speak to your destiny, not your dysfunction. People who support your growth, not your comfort. People who recognize your calling, not just your personality. People who align with your future, not your past. Your purpose requires strength, clarity, and emotional maturity. That is why God clears your circle before he reveals your assignment. He cannot reveal the blueprint of your destiny to people who lack the spiritual capacity to understand it. He cannot release your next level while you are surrounded by people connected to your old level. He cannot give you purpose while you cling to relationships that would mishandle it. Everything God removes is a divine exchange. He takes what is small to give you what is greater. He takes what is temporary to give you what is eternal. He takes what is comfortable to give you what is transformational. You do not lose people, you evolve beyond them. You do not lose relationships, you outgrow the version of yourself that needed them. You do not lose connection, you gain alignment. And in the silence after their departure, something sacred begins to take shape. Purpose, clarity, direction, identity, and divine revelation. Because before God reveals purpose, he removes anything or anyone that cannot carry it. Loss is one of the most misunderstood experiences in the human journey. People assume that because something leaves their life, they have somehow missed God's will, failed at something important, or fallen out of alignment with destiny. But loss is not always a sign of misalignment. Sometimes loss is the evidence that you are being guided, you are being shifted, you are being prepared for a future that can only emerge once certain things are cleared out of your path. What you lost was never necessary for where you are going. It was only necessary for who you were. There is a divine wisdom in subtraction. God is not afraid to remove what you have grown attached to, because he knows what you refuse to release will eventually restrict your purpose. There are seasons where he gently takes things away, and seasons where he allows them to fall apart on their own. Either way, the outcome is the same. What left your life did not carry the capacity to journey with you into the next dimension of your destiny. Not everyone and not everything is designed to survive your evolution. When you begin to grow, when you begin to awaken spiritually, when you begin to align with your calling, your life will naturally begin to shed the unnecessary. Old desires fade, old friendships dissolve, old habits lose their power, old environments no longer feel comfortable. What you once thought you needed becomes irrelevant. This shedding is not a punishment, it is refinement. You are being shaped into someone new, and the person you are becoming cannot carry the weight of what belonged to the person you used to be. Loss becomes your teacher. It reveals what was temporary, what was misaligned, what was draining your spirit. Some things you held on to were rooted in fear, not faith. Some relationships existed because you needed emotional support, not because they aligned with your purpose. Some opportunities were accepted out of survival, not destiny. And when God begins to align your path, He will remove everything that cannot elevate with you. A higher calling demands lighter luggage. You could not climb to your next level while carrying the weight of unnecessary attachments. You could not enter your divine assignment while holding on to things that were never part of the Master's design. What was taken from you was not a loss, it was a release. It created space. It cleared the atmosphere. It freed your hands so you could receive what truly belongs to you. There are moments when you will feel the emotional sting of losing what you cared about. That is a natural response, but beneath that emotional pain is spiritual truth. If it was necessary for your purpose, it would still be here. God does not take away what is essential. He takes away what is limiting. He does not remove what strengthens you. He removes what slows you down. He does not close doors that lead to destiny. He closes doors that lead to detours. Sometimes what you lost was something you prayed to keep, and that is why loss can feel so disorienting. You believed it was right, you believed it was meant for you, but what you thought was a blessing may have been a distraction. What you believed was stable may have been a temporary lesson. What you assumed would last forever may have been designed only to prepare you for the next chapter. You misjudged the duration of the assignment, but God knew the expiration date. Some losses feel unfair. Someone walked away without explanation. A relationship ended that you thought could be healed. A job vanished that you depended on. A door closed that you were sure would open. But what if the loss was not sabotage? What if it was divine compassion? God loves you too much to allow what is not aligned with your future to remain in your present. He intervenes even when you do not understand, because He protects the destiny you have not yet seen. There are losses that felt devastating in the moment but became blessings in disguise. You later realized that the person you thought you needed was draining your purpose. The job you cried about losing was blocking your true calling. The door that closed spared you from an environment that would have crushed your confidence. You didn't lose, you were rescued. You didn't break, you were redirected. You didn't fail, you were repositioned. When God removes something, He is making room for something greater. Your life cannot stay cluttered with expired attachments and still receive divine promise. Purpose requires pruning. Growth requires separation. Elevation requires release. Everything that falls away is clearing a path for what is meant to rise, and the more you look back, the more you understand that nothing that left your life was capable of carrying you to your God-given destination. Even the losses you never asked for have divine intention. The job that ended pushed you to discover your true gifts. The friendship that dissolved taught you emotional boundaries. The heartbreak awakened your spiritual identity. The disappointments strengthened your discernment. Loss shapes you into someone wiser, stronger, and more aligned. Loss is not your enemy. It is the sculptor that chisels away everything that hides your purpose. You must stop grieving what God has already dismissed. Stop trying to resurrect connections that have spiritually expired. Stop fighting for spaces that no longer fit who you are. Stop romanticizing what God has already replaced with a higher plan. When you cling to what you lost, you cannot embrace what is coming. Your hands cannot hold both at the same time. Everything you needed for your past journey was provided. Everything you need for your future is already being prepared. The losses you faced were simply the bridge between the two. They were never meant to define you. They were meant to refine you. They cracked open the shell of who you thought you were so the truth of your identity could finally emerge. Your purpose is too big for certain people, places, and patterns. If they could have walked with you into your destiny, they would still be here. If they were part of the greater plan, God would not have allowed the separation. What you lost was not a mistake, it was misalignment, and misalignment cannot coexist with divine purpose. There will come a day when you look back and thank God for every loss. You will see how each one cleared a path, strengthened your spirit, sharpened your vision, and made you ready for the magnitude of what is coming. Nothing was taken from you that was essential. What left your life was simply not required for where you are going. You were not meant to carry it into your future. You were meant to release it so you could rise. There are seasons in life when you feel like you are waiting longer than everyone else. You pray, you hope, you sow, you work, and yet the blessing does not arrive when you expect it. You watch others rise while you remain still. You watch others receive what you once asked for. You watch time pass and wonder if God has forgotten you. But the truth you must anchor into is this: God's timing is not neglect, delay, or denial. God's timing is care, it is precision, it is protection, it is divine orchestration working in silence. There is no such thing as late in God's vocabulary. The one who created time does not operate inside the limits of time. He moves with purpose, with intention, and with a strategy far greater than what you can see. Every moment he delays is a moment he is preparing something for you, or preparing you for something. When God waits, it is because something must align, shift, mature, or develop before the blessing can flow without harming you. You must understand that blessings out of season are burdens. Opportunities that arrive too early become overwhelming. Relationships that manifest before your healing becomes disaster. Influence that comes before your identity is rooted can destroy you. God's timing is not about withholding. It is about ensuring that what he gives you will sustain you, elevate you, and not crush you. He withholds only to uphold your destiny. There are things you prayed for that you were not ready to handle yet. You mistook readiness for desire. You believed wanting something meant you were prepared for it. But divine readiness is different. It requires spiritual strength, emotional maturity, internal stability, and a heart aligned with God's voice. Desire without development can lead to destruction, and so God waits until the version of you standing today can carry the weight of what you asked for. You only see the moment, God sees the journey. You see what you want, God sees what it will require. You see the blessing, God sees the responsibility attached to it. He times everything according to your purpose, not your impatience. Every delay is a divine detail. Every postponement is a layer of protection. Every moment you wait is shaping you into someone who will not sabotage the miracle when it arrives. When God makes you wait, he is strengthening the foundation beneath you. A tall building cannot stand on weak ground. Your destiny is bigger than you imagine, so your foundation must be deeper than you expect. Every season of waiting is building something beneath the surface: character, patience, faith, discipline, humility, and discernment. These qualities become the pillars that support your purpose. There are battles you have not yet faced that God is preparing you for. If he blessed you too soon, you would step into rooms that you do not yet know how to handle. You would enter environments that require a version of you still in the making. You would encounter challenges that require strength you have not yet developed. God's timing ensures that when you step into your next level, you step in equipped, empowered, and spiritually fortified. Timing is not just about readiness, it is also about alignment. There are people who must leave your life before the blessing comes. There are connections that must form before the opportunity arrives. There are doors that must close before the right one opens. There are hearts that must heal, minds that must shift, environments that must change, and circumstances that must move before your prayer can manifest in perfect harmony. God arranges the pieces long before he reveals the picture. Sometimes God delays because he is protecting you from dangers you do not know about. He slows you down because something ahead is not safe. He pauses your progress because he sees what you cannot. If you rushed ahead, you would collide with storms that he is clearing out of your path. His silence is not indifference, it is a shield. His slowness is not neglect, it is shelter. You may feel forgotten, but you are actually being watched over with divine precision. You may feel delayed, but you are actually being positioned. You may feel overlooked, but you are actually being prepared. Nothing in your life is random, nothing is wasted, nothing is accidental. Everything is orchestrated by perfect timing. Patience is not passive, it is an active trust, a spiritual posture, a declaration that says, I believe God knows what I do not yet know. Patience is the highest expression of faith because it means you trust God's plan more than your own timeline. While you wait, God is working. While you rest, God is rearranging. While you wonder, God is weaving together the details that will blow your mind when the season arrives. There are breakthroughs that are already yours, but they must reach their appointed time before they manifest. There are prayers God has already answered in the spiritual realm that have not yet unfolded in the natural realm. There are blessings that are on their way but still moving through the process of divine alignment. Just because you cannot see it does not mean it is not happening. Waiting is evidence that something is being prepared. Consider how nature teaches timing. Seeds do not sprout the moment they are planted. Seasons do not change the moment you feel ready for them. The sunrise does not rush because you wake early. Everything in creation follows divine timing. And yet everything arrives exactly when it is meant to. So does your purpose, so does your breakthrough, so does every blessing with your name on it. There will come a moment, quiet, sudden, undeniable, when everything will fall into place. The wait will make sense, the delay will reveal its purpose, the struggle will prove its value, the timing will show you that God was not withholding, He was preparing. You will realize that if the blessing had arrived earlier, it would not have lasted. If the door had opened sooner, you would not have been ready to walk through it. If the relationship had formed before its time, it would have collapsed under pressure. Every second God made you wait was intentional. Every season you endured was shaping you. Every pause was protection. Every setback was setup. Every delay was divine design. And when the blessing finally arrives, when the door opens, when the opportunity unfolds, when the prayer manifests, you will know without question that it came at the perfect time, not your time, not their time. God's time, and that timing alone, will prove just how deeply, intentionally, and tenderly He has been caring for you all along.